What is up, everybody out there in podcast land, and welcome to the Pop Culture Basement. I'm your host, Mike Jamison, and with me down in the basement tonight, back-to-back weeks with someone doing their first podcast. I love it. I'm introducing so many people to the wonderful world of podcasting. I am the podcasting ambassador. God help us all. I have with me Brad Reiter, but you might know him better as Big Beard Booty Daddy. Brad, how are you doing tonight?
I'm doing pretty good. It's a Friday night, so can't complain too much.
Am I saying your last name correctly?
Yes.
All right. Because for somebody who has lived his whole life with people saying his last name incorrectly, I always want to try to say the last names correctly. And I do have to ask now. We've been talking for a while. This is another guest. Every podcast, I feel like I'm blaming the Best Care Anywhere boys because they are supplying me with all my guests. We met through Best Care Anywhere talking about MASH.
Yep.
So I wanted to ask you, all this time we've been talking, where does the nom de plume, I hope I'm saying that. I'm trying to sound intelligent by saying that. Where does Big Beard Booty Daddy come from? Because I love that. I love it.
Yeah. Well, there used to be a wrestler named Scott Steiner. He wrestled for both the WWF and WCW, and late in his career, he was known as the Big Bad Booty Daddy. Okay. And when I signed up to Twitter, I'm awful with picking up names. That's not one of my strong suits, and I've always had a big beard, or I've always tried to that's my thing. I'm bald. Can't grow the long hair, so go with the beard instead. And I just was like, big beard. How does that? What can I do something with beard? And somehow it just came together. Big Beard Booty Daddy. So it just worked and stuck, and that's the one thing on Twitter I haven't changed at all since I signed up. Way too many years ago.
I should have remembered that because and you are. The audience might not know for the people who aren't Best Care Anywhere fans because we all talk with each other. But for the other listeners, if you need to go to somebody for wrestling for any information in wrestling, I would direct them towards you. And I have not been a big wrestling fan since the early 2000s, but I do remember Scott Steiner, so I should have remembered that. I should have thought of that. And I wanted to note, as a fellow bald man, I do understand that not being able to grow the hair. I cannot grow a cool beard. This is not a video podcast, but Brad has a very, very cool beard. I actually just trimmed my beard. I'll be going on vacation in a week and a half, so the beard is going to come off because the wife has laid down the law that the beard comes off when the vacation pictures have to start. So I only have a week and a half left of the beard, and playing into that. Speaking of vacation, this is going to be the season finale of season 1 of Pop Culture Basement. We're going to take a little break after this episode, but I think this is going to be a cool episode to end season 1 because Brad and I tonight are going to be talking about the Batman movies, specifically. I keep wanting to say the Batman movies of the 90s. It's so close.
Yeah,
it's so
89.
Close. Yes. So we're going to be talking about and I even want to say the original 4 Batman movies because it's kind of like that before and after period. It's these Batman movies, then it's The Dark Knight, then it's Ben Affleck. I feel like it's broken into the Burton Schumacher Batman movies, The Dark Knight, then it's Ben Affleck, and now it's Robert Pattinson. And if we ever get another one, because it seems like, I don't know, maybe we'll talk about that after we talk about these 4 movies. We'll touch a little bit on the other Batmans, but yes, tonight we're going to be talking about Batman 89, Batman Returns, Batman Forever, and Batman and Robin. So these were the Batman movies of my formative years. Brad, I don't know this answer. This isn't one of those, we talked about it beforehand and now I'm trying to make it sound like I'm asking you off the cuff. Is Batman your favorite superhero?
He's actually not. Growing up, I was never a huge superhero fan. My first foray into it was really like the Superman movies, the Donner, Superman movies. So I guess that that really I kind of have a special place for that. But Batman, I was always one of those people who were like, all right, Superman is the superhero and Batman's the rich guy with gadgets.
Yeah,
So yeah, but
that's a
yeah,
that's a good way. That's a good way to sum it up, I think.
but over the years I have grown to enjoy the character a lot more because there just there's so much depth to the character. It's more than just the rich guy who can buy a bunch of cool stuff and have his butler help him out with things.
So you're talking about the Donner Superman movies. I want to take a guess. I would think you're around the same age that I am. I just turned 50.
Yeah, I'm 44, so
Okay, so yeah,
close to
close.
close.
Yes, you're young, and
Yeah,
everybody I have on here is always younger than me now. It's really depressing.
yeah.
So you were how old when Batman 89 came out?
I was 8 years old.
Okay, so you were 8.
80. Yeah.
I was 14. I was 14. I would turn 15 later that year. So with Batman 89 for me, and I grew up also with the Donner Superman movies. I'm hoping in season 2, now that this is the end
Yeah.
of season 1, I'm hoping in a later podcast to do a podcast similar to this one where I have somebody on to talk about the Donner slash Richard Lester Superman movies. But those were the superhero movies. I always say it to my son now because as I say on other podcasts, I've indoctrinated him into my nerddom with comics and comic book movies. But I say to him, when I was a kid, we didn't have it like this, where
Hmm.
now it's almost, okay, Fantastic Four is coming out. I guess we'll get tickets for that. Batman 89 was the biggest thing in my life in 1989 because all I had growing up, movies wise, was those Superman movies, which is really two really good ones, and
Yeah, and
then
then yeah,
one that's okay, one that I can enjoy now, but is okay, and one that
we want to forget.
the less we talk about it, the better.
Yeah,
And the Batman TV show, the 70s Spider-Man
yeah,
TV show, the 70s Incredible Hulk, but that
yeah,
was really it.
yeah.
When it was announced that Batman was coming out, I know we're going to keep talking about it as Batman 89, but obviously back then it was Batman.
Batman.
When it
Yeah.
was announced that Batman was coming out, it was all I could think about. It was basically, it consumed my world.
Hmm.
And I feel like with this podcast, I've come to realize, I think 1989, as I said, I was 14. I think that was the year that I really had my pop culture awakening, in that it was the year that I started to know what I liked on my own. I
Hmm.
started to pick out the music that was going to be mine and that I would like. I started to pick out the TV shows that I wanted to watch and didn't just watch because my family watched them, and started to go and rent videotapes that I wanted to rent because these were movies that I wanted to see. So, and in a time before the internet, before all the information that we have now, all you could get was little bits and pieces and scraps of
Hmm.
information about Batman. I'm trying to think of when I found out. Well, first of all, let me ask how it was for you. How was it for you?
Back then, back in '89, it's funny 'cause I watched at 8 years old. It was I would watch what my parents watched. I have an older brother, so whatever he watched or music he listened to. And it's funny that you say you were about 14 when the movie came out, and I was probably around 13, 14 when I had a similar awakening of coming into my own, of enjoying different music and different shows and stuff. But '89 was probably still the time when I was still watching whatever was on TV in the house. Being the youngest, I didn't get to choose my own stuff a lot unless my brother wasn't home from school. So it was still like still kind of a weird time in that respect for that. But I do remember. The funny thing is with this movie. This movie actually was. It has the first single that I ever owned is from this movie, and my mom knew that that I enjoyed listening to Prince's music, and I remember her coming home and handing me over the single for Bat Dance, and which I still have to this day. I don't know where it is. It's somewhere in the house, but I still have that the single for that somewhere in here. And that was the first cassette that I ever remember owning that was mine. I didn't share it with my brother or anything, but it was mine. It was so.
So you're saying it was on cassette? Was it a single?
Yes.
That's something that I think is lost to time now. The single. Some people, if I say it to you, you'll get it. Some people will just look at you with a quizzical look on their face and say, "Single." But I'm glad to know that I could say it to you, and you're like, "Yes, a single," because I can remember going to the mall and buying singles. So you're saying that you have an older brother. What was it like with you growing up? Obviously, pop culture basement. I always talk about being down in my basement, watching all these movies and playing video games and reading. What was your experience just consuming pop culture? You're in New York, correct?
Yes. Yeah. Queens,
Okay.
New York. Yeah.
Okay.
It it was, we'd have WPIX, so every Saturday we'd put on whatever movie was on. Ferris Bueller, I must have seen about 35,000 times. The Saturday afternoon movie. They must have played every John Hughes movie known to man at that time. So we actually didn't get a TV in our bedroom. We had an old black and white TV that my parents had, so it was one of those ones you had to get up and actually manually change. I'm sure you had the time. You at what midnight it switch over to playing. The God Bless America or whatever it was. For the
Sure.
night, and then you wake up at 5 o'clock in the morning and turn on. And you'd watch the stop motion cartoons and stuff, and
Yes,
Davy and
yes.
Goliath. So I used to get up early to watch that on the weekends. And then whatever my parents are watching in the other room, most of the time I would go in there, and in the dining room, and we'd watch, you have Married with Children when it first started. I remember watching that. My dad set up the two VCRs, so we'd rent videos from the local mom and pop places, and he duped movies every weekend. So he had hundreds and hundreds of movies, and just tapes that he'd buy, and he'd get like 2 or 3 movies on, depending how long they were, two or
Don't
three
you
movies on
miss
a tape.
Don't you miss those videotapes?
Yeah,
The best was you would look on the side to see what was on there, and inevitably, in my house, it would be Ghostbusters, and then under it, it would be General Hospital because my mom would be taping her soap operas. So it'd be Ghostbusters, General Hospital, and 1984 Grammy Awards. So I do want to say Queens, New York, to me always held almost a mythical place in my mind because I knew that's where Spider-Man was from. So in the late 90s, I started dating a girl who lived in Queens, and I had to drive up there. This was before MapQuest or anything like that. I remember her stepdad, I think, over the phone giving me directions on how to drive from my house in Southwest Philadelphia to Queens, New York. And I don't know how I made it in my old broken down K car. I don't know how that car made it. And getting there, I always thought, because I would read Spider-Man comics and it said that he lived in Queens, but it looked like he had this huge house and it looked like he lived in the suburbs. So I didn't know what to expect. I'd been to New York a couple times with my
yeah,
parents, but just Manhattan. So I didn't know what to expect. And when I got there, it kind of looked like my neighborhood where she lived in a row home like I did. So
yeah.
I finally it kind of broke the magical hold it had on me because I was finally there. So I was like, okay, now I've been here and I see what it's like. Was that kind of, did you grow up in a row home, single home, or?
I grew up called garden apartments, where it was like 4 apartments, two on one side, two on the other, 2 floors. So we were the second floor of garden apartments, and they had those all around and everything. And then you go down a few blocks and you get the huge apartment towers and stuff. So a little bit of everything.
So it was you and your brother.
Yeah.
And so you used to, like you said, it's a lot like the way I grew up with. I was down in my basement, and they always talk about with Batman '89 the famous trailer that they put out because they were so nervous when they announced that Michael Keaton had been cast. Now, again, if it was in today's media landscape and social media landscape, I think the internet literally would have burned down. I think when you would
But yeah,
check Twitter or Facebook, your phone would have exploded the way that people reacted to Michael Keaton being cast.
I think people look at it almost with rose-colored glasses. Whenever there's a new Batman, named, and it's like, oh, Michael Keaton, he didn't get that. Like, no, he got that. Everyone was like, wait, Michael Keaton? He's talented, but Michael Keaton?
He's a comedian.
Yeah.
And I don't remember him being announced because, as I said, I was into movies, but
Hmm.
it was before I was really following all this kind of
Yeah.
stuff. I don't even remember really how I knew a Batman movie was coming out. So they always talk about the famous trailer that they put out, I think around Christmas of '88, the silent trailer. It had dialogue. It didn't have any background music,
Hmm.
and it had a couple of the scenes. You didn't really see Keaton fully in the suit. You kind of saw him silhouetted, which is good for Batman, and it built up mystery and it got the excitement going
Yeah.
for the movie. I don't remember actually seeing that in the movie theater. I do remember watching Entertainment Tonight before Ain't It Cool News and before film Twitter and before the internet. Entertainment Tonight was,
Yep.
if you were an aspiring film geek and nerd the way I was, that's where you went to get your movie news.
Yeah.
So I can kind of remember following along as it got into spring of '89 to see if there was any kind of news for the Batman movie. I guess I'm going to try to release this on June 23rd. I do remember just the posters with the huge bat symbol
Hmm.
that just said June 23rd under it. Um, when I did finally get to see it, and I didn't even know you were talking about the single that you got. I didn't know that Prince was doing the soundtrack. It's just weird to think back because now we're getting ready for Superman coming out next
Yeah.
month,
Yep.
and not that you know everything because the way that James Gunn is releasing the trailers and the promotional material, he's not giving away too much, but you know when it's coming out. You
Hmm.
watch all the trailers, you jump onto YouTube as soon as they come out. There was marketing today that came out over Twitter where it's supposed to be you could subscribe to the Daily Planet and get updates. Back then you're trying, we talked about videotapes, you're throwing a videotape in during Entertainment Tonight and hoping to catch a trailer or to catch some scenes from
Oh
Batman.
yeah.
So for me, that summer of '89, I talk about the whole year, but that summer was really transformative because that was the summer not only of Batman, it was the summer of Ghostbusters 2, it
Hmm.
was the summer of Indiana Jones and the Last Crusade. So it was a you
It was big.
for a
It
14-year-old
was
kid,
big.
for a 14-year-old nerd like me, it was huge. And even before the movie, I remember buying the Batman novelization and the comic book adaptation. And back then, we were still going to the Jersey Shore. We had a trailer that my family of 4 and my aunt's family of 5 shared together. So it was 5, it was 5 kids, 4 adults, and my grandmother and grandfather all on a trailer. I think my parents and my aunt and uncle were just gluttons for punishment. But there was it wasn't a corner store, but there was a deli that we would stop in to go shopping just for snacks or things like that. And I remember buying the Batman movie adaptation comic
Hmm.
from there. And I think I bought the novelization from the Deptford Mall in New Jersey. We used to go with my mom and my grandmother, and while they shopped, I would go into Walden Books and just hang out and sit and read books on the floor. So I think I read the novelization before I even saw the movie. Now, do you remember actually going to see?
I don't remember. The only thing I remember is I think I went with my camp to go see it because they take us to see like once or twice during the summer to see whatever random movie, and if there was something big, we'd go see that. And I think that's where I remember more seeing it when it was released on video, and my dad rented it to dupe it and everything. But
Smart man.
that I remember more than going to see it in the theaters. But yeah, like I said, the only thing I really remember is I'm pretty sure we did see it with my day camp.
For me, I saw it at the Shore Mall right outside of Atlantic City while we were down the shore. I remember for some reason I always remember walking in to go, and my mom had bought a big bag of Twizzlers beforehand, and I remember her showing it to me and saying, "Make sure they don't know when we go into the movie theater." uh, and I remember getting in there, watching the movie, and then after it was done, my dad saying to me, "You leaned forward the entire time while the movie was going on." That I was just leaned forward almost in
Yeah.
anticipation for the whole movie. That summer, I mean, it was a phenomenon. It was
Hmm.
the whole summer. That was the summer of Batman. I remember again staying down the Jersey Shore, walking on the boardwalk. I bought it was a flag, but it wasn't like a flag that you would hang on a flagpole, but it was almost like a silk flag, and it was of
Okay.
Batman in silhouette, and you could tell it was the Keaton Batman. And I
Yeah.
remember getting home after the summer and putting that up in me and my brother's room. Um, Reading the novelization, I think 3, 4, 5 times. Right before the movie came out, there was a special on 2020 where they did an hour-long special on Batman. I think you could find it on YouTube, and I've watched it a couple times just because it's stuck in my mind. Because I was just obsessed with anything Batman that summer. I joined the Columbia House, so I got the soundtrack,
The soundtrack.
and it was cool because it was on cassette, and it was just the bat symbol, just like the just
Yep.
like the movie poster.
Yep.
And to your point, it did come out around Christmas time of '89. And I think my parents actually got it for me for Christmas. So it had to be one of the first videotapes we ever bought.
Okay.
And
Yeah.
I might still have it. I have to, around COVID, 5 years ago, in the dark times, the before times, when COVID first hit and everybody was stuck at home. That's when a lot of people decided, oh, we're going to clean the whole house and get everything organized
Yep.
because we have nothing else to do. And I was going through a bunch of stuff in the basement, and I had a bunch of videotapes that I told my wife, I said, I can't throw these out. I have to keep them. To which she replied, we don't have a VCR. I said to her, I know, but I can't throw these out. This is The Empire Strikes Back. I can't throw this out. I only own it on 7 other different platforms. So I think I can remember the videotape. It's just the bat symbol that's so effective. On the back, it's the picture of Batman and Vicky Vale, and he's holding his grappling
Hmm.
hook, shooting it almost toward the camera, but it's when he's
Yeah.
shooting it up. And I think the other picture was the Batmobile, and then just under it says the movie of the decade. And it wasn't Peter Travers from Rolling Stone. I can't. It might be WWOR, which I think wasn't that in New York? Was that
That's
a
New
New York
York. Yeah.
station?
Yep.
I think it was somebody from WWOR, but I just remember under it just said the movie of the decade, and that was the videotape that had the famous WB commercial
Mm.
beforehand for the WB store, and then the Diet Coke commercial where Alfred is getting the Diet Coke ready for
Yep.
for Master Bruce before he gets home.
Yep. The wonderful
Um,
tie-ins.
yes. So that was it. Really was. That was, and it's funny because you're a little bit younger. I'm a little bit older. I think it hit me a little bit differently just because I was a little, and like I said, it just helped to contribute that year because that
Mm.
was just the year that, and I kind of want to do an episode on this. I want to do an episode on 1989 pop culture because it really was. I think back to a lot of the things I still like today came out of the year 1989
Yeah.
because I became aware of them. But being such a comic book nerd that I was, now what did you think? I guess when you were 8, did you have any kind of opinion on Michael Keaton as Batman, or was it just, well, this is Batman?
I just remember seeing him in a couple of other things and just being like, "Oh, cool, Michael." I like this guy. I didn't know names. A lot of names of actors and stuff. Just, oh, that guy from that movie. The other stuff I liked. So as an 8-year old, it's like, oh, cool. He's playing a cool character.
Now, looking back in hindsight with all these years, what are your feelings on 89 now?
89, I rewatched this, all four movies, when we were talking about doing this, and I have a new appreciation for the latter ones, and the 89 was always the Batman movie for me, the big Batman movie. I actually remember Batman Returns a lot more, going to the movies to see that one a lot more, and a lot, and being a big Danny DeVito fan and just loving seeing him in it. But 89, it was always like, I'd watched that one so much when it was released, whether it was on TV or on VHS or later on DVD. That was always my go-to, and I loved it. And watching it now, I I still like it. I still think it's a really really well-made movie, but I don't know if I hold it as high as I did, you know, 5, 6, 7 years ago. It's something about rewatching it again not too long ago. I was like, all right, this is good, but maybe not as good as I remember it.
Yeah, it's always hard to separate the, I don't want to say the hype, the legacy of what 89 was,
Yeah.
and separate that from the movie itself, because it will always hold that place for me, and I think a lot of people, as that first big superhero movie for our generation. And it was the movie that launched not the modern superhero genre, but after 89 there were a slew of
Hmm.
some superhero movies, not as successful as what Iron Man and the Dark Knight
Yeah.
spawned. And for the time, to your point, I watched it in the movies. I probably went maybe 2 or 3 times because I was still going with my parents then. It wasn't like I could just drive to go see it. But then got it on VHS, and as I said, it was one of the first videotapes that we owned. Every Friday night, Batman was in the VCR, and I was watching
Hmm.
Batman over and over and over. I think because I'm such a and I've tried to curb these tendencies as I've gotten older and hopefully wiser. You go through, I feel like with 89 and any of these Batman movies, you go through what I went through with the Batman TV show, where when you're younger, you love it because that was what you grew up on, and you almost don't know any better. And I don't mean that in a bad way, but that's Batman. Then you get a little bit older and maybe you read the comics like I did, and you say, well, that's not what Batman is. This is silly. I don't understand. It's campy and this is stupid. But then you get a little bit older, you get a little more older, and you realize, oh, I see what they were doing there. It's not that bad. I feel like for 89, I was so excited for it, and it was such this big milestone in my life that nothing could touch it. I loved it, and I watched it so many times. And then as I got older and I became more of a comic book geek, even when it came out, and I like Michael Keaton, and I think he's great, and I think he's a great Batman. But there was always that part of me that was thinking, okay, but he doesn't really look like that Bruce Wayne
Hmm.
in the comics, and I wish he was a little bit taller. And I remember my dad that summer saying, "Oh, I always imagined somebody like Arnold Schwarzenegger, built like Arnold Schwarzenegger, would be Batman." To which I said to him, "I don't think Batman would be that muscular."
No.
And then when it came out, it was so hyped up that it was taking inspiration from the Dark Knight Returns and the Killing
Hmm.
Joke, and this is going to be the serious Batman, and it's going to wash away the pow and biff and boom that Batman 66. But as you watch it as you're older, there's a lot of campiness in Batman
Yes.
89. I think
Yeah.
Keaton's great. I think Nicholson is great as the Joker. I think he's the closest we've ever come to a comics accurate Joker, just with his
Hmm.
personality. But for all its claims of how dark and serious it is, there is a
Yeah.
lot of campiness, and for
Yeah.
some of it good, some of it bad.
Yeah, that's
I
one of
think.
the things that I noticed. Like, as the series went on, you obviously get a lot more campy. But the
Mhm.
one thing I noticed about this one was like this one does have a lot of camp to it, a lot more than I remember. Like you said, this was supposed to be the serious one, the one, the brooding Batman, the really serious one, and there really is a lot of camp to it. You don't have him, you don't have Michael Keaton running down the hallway with a giant bomb or or anything like that about to blow up, but you do get some of that, some of the campiness in it.
And um I
especially
think,
with Jack Nicholson. Jack
yeah, and
Nicholson does bring a lot of that to it.
I'm sitting here thinking that I think Michael Keaton could have pulled off the running down the hallway at the bomb. I think it kind of what we're talking about too goes for Michael Keaton, where the uproar when he was cast, then the movie came out and people saw it and said, "Oh, he was actually pretty good."
Yeah.
Then the movies progressed and people thought, okay, well, other people can play Batman, and maybe he wasn't that great. To where it's come all the way around again to when the Flash was released a couple of years ago. The main selling point of the movie was
Michael
Michael
Keaton.
Keaton coming back as Batman.
He finally got his flowers.
He did finally get his flowers, and I think I do think he's great. There's still that geeky part of me that when I watch it, because when we discussed this, I watched them all, and I watched 89 with my son because when he was younger, he watched it, but he didn't really
Hmm.
remember. So I said, watch this again. And he's somebody who's seen all the Dark Knight and he's seen Batman vs Superman, and he liked it. But he even said he was like, I don't really see him as Bruce Wayne. I understand what Burton was going for with
Hmm.
that version. He has said, oh, well, I wanted to cast somebody who nobody would ever think would be Batman because he doesn't look like somebody who would be Batman, which I get. Now, I will say I love the bat suit. I think the bat suit is cool. I do remember when the movie came out thinking, why isn't it gray and blue? Why is it all black? But I get why they did it. I do like that he has the yellow oval. I'm team yellow oval. I need the yellow oval to come back for the James Gunn movies.
Hmm.
And the Batmobile is iconic. It's just
Yes.
it's an amazing Batmobile.
Yeah.
I
Yeah.
I feel like the only bad Batmobile, and it's not even bad, but the Tumbler was never my favorite. I understand for Nolan with
Yeah.
his it's got to be real, what he was kind of going
It's
for.
almost too over the top.
So with 89, I still do enjoy it, but I feel like the older I get and the more times I watch it, the more cracks I see,
Yeah.
the more seams kind of show. There's always going to be a place in my heart for it just
Hmm.
because it was Batman 89
Yeah.
and it was such I was right at that right age where it just was, I didn't have the bat symbol shaved into the back of my head, but I know people who did. Let's just say that. So I was there for the explosion and for that
Oh
phenomenon
yeah.
that summer, and so it'll always hold that special place in my heart.
Yeah.
We were talking about Danny DeVito and Batman Returns. So by the time with Batman Returns in 92, I was graduating high school. I was just graduating high
Okay.
school in 92. I was 17. I was not yet 18. So I was still a big comic book nerd. By then, I was driving myself so I could go drive myself to comic book stores, grab comic books, drive myself to the movies, go to the movies. So this was the first Batman movie that I got to go and see on my own.
Hmm.
And with this one, with the hype, I don't remember. Even with this one, I don't remember the hype of it as much. I do remember the one. My big memory from before the movie coming out was the Rolling Stone magazine cover with Keaton in the bat suit, but he was turned around, so you just saw his back with the cape.
Okay.
I don't remember ever seeing a trailer for it beforehand, which is kind of weird. I do remember this. I think it was the summer of 90 after Batman 89 that they started speculating on who would be in the second movie. And I think Burton had even said it's going to be Catwoman and the Penguins. In the National Enquirer, they had a picture of Cher's face superimposed over the old 60s Catwoman outfit. And they had a picture of Dustin Hoffman on the Penguins' body. So those were some of the rumors. I think I do remember hearing that Sean Young was supposed to play Catwoman because she was supposed to play Vicky Vale
Hmm.
in the first Batman movie until she broke her leg. She was actually cast as Vicky
Yeah.
Vale, then broke
Yeah.
her leg during filming, and they brought in Kim Basinger, who was John Peters' girlfriend at the time, who was the executive producer of Batman. So that's how she got that. I actually like her as Vicky Vale,
Yeah.
but
Not a bad
no.
replacement at all.
So Sean Young at first was supposed to be Catwoman until she kind of screwed that up by being Sean Young and being weird,
Yeah.
uh, which is an understatement. Yeah, I don't remember even hearing that. I think it was almost a fait accompli that Danny DeVito was going to be cast as a Penguin. I mean, in '92, who else really would you get
Yeah.
to star as the Penguin. Michelle Pfeiffer, for me, was one of the first crushes I had. So when
Okay.
Michelle Pfeiffer, I do remember having a picture of her as Catwoman taped onto my wall in my bedroom. So I thought that was a good choice. But again, the nerd in me was thinking, oh, but she doesn't look like the comic book Catwoman. And why is the Penguin have like fish hands and a weird nose? And he how come he doesn't have the machine gun? Why isn't he using the machine gun
Yeah,
umbrellas
at the top. Yeah.
like he usually does? He
Yeah.
only has it for 1 second. And who's Christopher Walken playing in this movie? I don't even get this.
Yeah,
I
the hands were always kind of, I mean, his whole thing, the Penguin's whole thing in that movie was. I mean, I love Danny DeVito. He's one of my all time favorites. I can watch him, in practically anything. If he was reading, the phone book, I would, slap down $5 to watch that. But like the whole thing of Penguin with the hands and obsessed with the eating of the fish, and it was just that one. Watching it now is kind of like, he's not a real penguin. What are we doing?
Yeah, Batman Returns is very much
Yeah.
uh Tim Burton with the shackles taken off. Batman 89 was such a hit. I mean, at the time it was I believe it was the fifth biggest movie of all time when
Hmm.
it finally ended its run. So, I mean, obviously they said to Burton, "Okay, we want you to come back." To which he said, "This is what I want to do, and if you want me to come back and direct this, you're going to let me do what I want to do." And they said, "Okay." Um I remember seeing it at the McDade Mall. So the McDade Mall was the mall that had the movie theater connected to it. There was a train that ran behind the movie theater, so you would watch the movie, but every once in a while you would hear the train running behind the movie theater. So I remember me and one of my good friends, I'm still good friends with them now, went and saw Batman Returns, and I don't know. I kind of felt conflicted because I think I expected more of what Batman 89 was, and it was
Hmm.
very different, and I didn't feel like there was enough Batman in it. Again, the comic book geek in me was just annoyed with the changes that were made to the characters.
Yeah.
I do remember, and it wasn't. It was again the biggest hit of the year. The first three Batman movies were all the number one movies of the year, but it wasn't as big of a hit as '89. So the WB executives kind of saw it as a disappointment, and famously, McDonald's had the rights to the Happy Meals, and
Yep.
supposedly kids were getting freaked out by the penguin by the penguin. And I think there's a famous Oprah episode where they have kids on and these kids had to be coached who were responding. You know, she would ask if the penguin was unsettling to them, and the kids were saying yes. I don't understand. I don't like how he was acting in the movie, and it was really scary. And you could tell their parents were probably, please just say this because we're going to be on Oprah, and maybe she'll give us a car.
Yeah. She would not have liked me because I it was a dark movie, and I loved the hell out of how dark Penguin was. Though I thought it was just the coolest thing.
I want to ask you now, what is your opinion of Returns after watching it as an adult?
It was much darker than I remember it being, and I mean, especially for a Christmas movie, it's definitely a lot darker. I actually like some parts of it more than the first one. Um, it's I thought there was a lot more action in this one. It felt like, and so I enjoyed that aspect of it. There was, like I said, not as much Batman, but there was a lot more action. I do like, the end fight, the last fight. I do like it. My big gripe with this one, and mainly the whole series, is why are they killing the villains? That's what,
Exactly.
Arkham is there. Why are you killing them?
Yeah,
The whole point of Batman is to get all the menagerie of villains together.
Yeah, this is again. I watched it with my son, and he has said we were joking even during '89 with the machine guns on the side of the
Yeah,
Batmobile, and when he drives into Axis Chemicals in Batman '89 and just drops the two bombs and drives out. I turned to my son, yeah, he just straight up murdered all those
yeah,
guys. he
yeah.
just killed all of them.
And
Yeah, the
I
comic nerd
actually,
in me
yeah,
felt exactly the same way. Batman does not kill people, but I still feel that way.
yeah,
I could go back to the Dark Knight, the end scene where the Joker falls and he shoots the grapple gun to save him. And I remember
hmm
turning to my brother and just slapping him on the arm because we were watching it together and saying, that's what Batman does. He wouldn't let him fall. He would
yeah,
save him. So yeah, I felt the same way. Why are they killing? I mean, I was glad they did not kill off Catwoman because
yeah,
everybody thought that she was going to get her own movie, her own spin-off movie. If it was now with the way that they do comic movies and franchises, she would have. And Michelle Pfeiffer, out of anybody, deserved to have a solo
yeah.
Catwoman movie. I think it would have been great.
Yeah.
Um,
One thing I do appreciate that this movie did was explain why Vicky Vale wasn't in it. Because
mhm.
it's like, oh, he finds this woman, you think maybe bring her over from the but they kind of did it in like the Karate Kid 2 type of way where they explain her away as opposed to it's like, oh, she what happened to her, oh, this is so. But I do appreciate that they actually went out of their way to to tie that part up.
No, I'm glad you bring that up because that's a really good point in that Batman Returns, for being a sequel, seems like a totally different movie
Hmm.
than Batman. Batman '89 and Batman Returns are both, you could tell they're filmed on sound stages. They're very, for being such big blockbusters, they're very small. All the
Yeah.
action in both movies take place, I think, on 2 blocks of Gotham City because
Yeah.
it's the same sets. But they kind of have the same aesthetic, but they seem very, very different. And I always waved it away as well. If you read comics, they have different artists, so
Hmm.
different issues
Yeah.
look different. But I do like that they explained that Vicky didn't want to stay with him because
Yeah.
he was Batman. I do like that they brought her up in the second one. So it's basically, and as you said, they're kind of hand waving it away, but they're still in a backhanded way connecting both
Yeah.
movies and saying this is the same.
Yeah.
This is the same universe. I think what Returns, Keaton is a lot more confident and assured as Batman. I think it's a really good performance by him. I think he looks really good. They streamlined the bat suit. I
Hmm.
like how he looks as Batman
Yep.
a lot better in this movie. Batmobile again looks great. Um, but yeah, there was just so much. The Penguin for me, I love Danny DeVito. I don't think he gives a bad performance.
Yeah.
I just
For what it
think
was, he was
for what it was,
for
I
what
just
the
think it's
character was supposed to be in the movie. He was
yeah, it's
great.
he's very much a Tim Burton character as
Yeah.
opposed to a DC Comics character. Now, I think Michelle Pfeiffer is amazing as
Yes.
Catwoman. She might
Oh
not
yeah.
be the classic comic book version of Catwoman in her origin with the whole 9 lives.
Hmm.
She falls out the window and the
Yeah.
cats
They
give her the
scratch her and eat her.
much like the Superman kiss of forgetfulness in Superman 2,
Yeah.
the cats have the licking of
Yeah.
9 lives healing or something. But other than that, and again, that's my comic book geekdom just showing through. She is amazing. And,
She
for
is.
a 17-year-old boy thinking he's a man, seeing her in that skin tight Catwoman outfit wasn't bad either. She's really good with a whip. Christopher Walken, amazing.
Yeah. Oh.
Amazing
Yeah. I
as
mean,
Max Shrek.
you look at the two casts that they put together for the first two movies, and it really was an amazing job that they did. I mean, Billy
Hmm.
D. Williams in
Yeah.
the first one, got to mention him, but he was great as Harvey Dent, and I would have loved to have seen what he would have brought as Two Face.
Now they have over the last couple of years, they've done a comic from Sam Hamm, who wrote the original screenplay for '89, where he continued it
Oh,
with Billy D. Williams as Two Face. It was okay, but it was cool. It was cool that they gave him the spotlight and showed where they
yeah.
possibly could have gone with him. Because I think he would have been a great Two Face. I think
Oh yeah.
he has the charisma and the acting chops, I think, to
Yes.
pull off that character.
Yeah.
Now, who knows if Tim Burton would have done it, what that Two-Face would have looked like, or he might have looked really cool, because I think Tim Burton, for whatever faults he might have or whatever tendencies he might have, he is good with production design
Yes.
and everything
Yeah.
like
Oh
that.
yeah.
But yeah, it would have been interesting it would have been really. But you're right. The cast of both movies, Jack Palance, we didn't bring him up from the
Oh
first
yeah.
one. Even Michael Murphy in Batman Returns is the mayor.
And
It's a small part, but
yeah, and how about the connection to our favorite TV show,
wait, I'm trying to think what connection do
Commissioner
we have?
Gordon?
Oh my goodness. You know
Yeah,
what?
Pat
Take
Hingle.
take away my mash card for one weekend for getting that. You know what? I will give a little spoiler for a couple seasons from now for MASH. Not one of my favorite episodes. But you are right, Commissioner Gordon. And I will say, bringing up my, this is going to be a theme through all the movies, my comic nerddom. He's good in Batman 89
Mm-hmm.
as Commissioner Gordon. I do love the scene in Returns when, it's the beginning scene, which is a great scene. The whole, Red Triangle Gang, when Batman, when they shine the bat signal, and
Yeah.
he's sitting alone brooding in Wayne Manor, and the bat signal shines on him. Which still, what if he had guests over? Why? How would he explain the bat signal shining? But he goes, and then he fights the Red Triangle Gang, and after it's all done, he's walking away, and Commissioner Gordon runs up to him and says, "Looks like the circus gang is back," and he just says to him, "We'll see," and just walks away. And I
Yeah.
always was like, that's
Yeah.
Batman. I think Pat Hingle, from what I've heard, I've only seen him in MASH and in the Batman movies. I've heard he's a really good character actor.
Mm-hmm.
Was not given a lot to do with
No.
Commissioner Gordon, especially after '89. I mean,
Yeah.
he's hardly in Returns, and then we'll get to the disintegration of his
Yeah.
character in Forever and Batman and Robin.
This might be a little bit of a letdown, but in regards to Danny Elfman,
Mm-hmm.
I think Danny Elfman is incredibly talented. I love Oingo Boingo. They're such a fun band, and the work he's done with with Burton over the years is phenomenal. And obviously in '89, it was a different time, but in watching them in 2025, it's like the most Tim Burton sounding music you could ever. And yeah, these are Tim Burton movies, obviously, but
Sure.
they just sound like Tim Burton. That's one thing I loved about the last two movies, where I thought the scores of those were didn't sound like Tim Burton, obviously, because he wasn't making them, but they sounded like they were more in the universe than what Danny Elfman did. And like I said, he did, the first two movies had great scores, but they were Danny Elfman, Tim Burton scores.
I get you. I get what you're saying. I don't know if I can totally agree, especially with '89, just because the Batman theme is so iconic.
Yeah, like that type of stuff. But there was certain, like, when the movie starts and you hear like the first few, they hear like the first few notes, like, oh yeah, that's Danny Elfman.
Yeah. I kind of wish, like, what they're doing right now with the Superman movie that is coming out. I do like that they're using that classic
Yeah,
John Williams score. I wish they would do for Superman and Batman what they do for Bond, where they just have their iconic themes, because I just think that Elfman Batman main theme is just so iconic that
yeah,
that should just be used. But I get what you're saying. I mean, I think he became the Tim Burton, Danny Elfman with
yeah,
Batman '89 and then continued it over. I think it's a little more heightened in Returns, to your point.
yeah.
I think it's very, very Burton-y
Yeah, like it's
to what
almost
you're
like
saying.
you could almost pick up, whatever he did in Batman outside of the Batman theme, certain themes, and move it over to Edward Scissorhands, and it would
Mm-hmm.
not miss a
Yes.
beat. That
Yeah.
type of thing.
Yep.
Obviously, like I said, it's 2025. We've heard, dozens of Danny Elfman scores for Tim Burton. So, you have that, like if you hear John Williams, you know what John Williams is going to sound like. But, so obviously in '89, you didn't have that same effect. But just rewatching him now, it's like, yeah, that's Danny Elfman there.
I get you. I get you.
I mean, it didn't kill the movies. It was just something, just a little thing on there.
I think it's to what I was bringing up before, in that when those first two movies came out, it was something that was so different, and it was
Yeah,
something that wasn't iconic yet, like it is now. That it was something new, so everybody was praising it because,
yeah,
oh my goodness, this is amazing. But now, in hindsight, and with those different movies, like you said, especially Edward Scissorhands, it was almost like that extension. It's like, okay, I see. And that's, I think, why John Williams is so amazing, where he can, you could be a composer and do Jaws and live off that for the rest of your life. Meanwhile, John Williams is like, I got Jaws. Okay, hold on, I got Star Wars. Oh, wait a minute, now I got
yeah,
Raiders of the Lost Ark. Oh, well, I also have Superman. And hold on, Schindler's List. And then I got this. So it's like, to be able to do that and be iconic with 4 or 5 or 6 different soundtracks. Whereas Danny Elfman, I think he's very much, and I'm not saying I don't like Danny Elfman, but I also am not one of those people who has to go out and buy every soundtrack that
hmm
Danny Elfman does. He's very much
yeah,
an acquired taste, and
yeah,
he has a certain vibe. And what you're saying, yes, is very accurate, in that you could go from Batman '89. Edward Scissorhands came out in '90, I believe, and that's
hmm
just more. It's Danny Elfman doing
yeah,
that music. It's very Danny Elfman with Tim Burton. So I get what you're saying.
yeah.
I'm going to date myself again and talk about the National Enquirer. I didn't think I'd be talking about the National Enquirer so much in this podcast, but I do remember sitting in my kitchen in Southwest Philadelphia, in my beloved Southwest Philadelphia row home, and reading. Maybe my parents got me. I don't remember my mom reading the National Enquirer that much. It wasn't me going and buying it from the local shopping bag, but maybe I bought it because I saw this on the cover. But I do remember reading in the National Enquirer, Michael Keaton quits. He's done
Mm.
with Batman. He's not playing Batman anymore. He thinks that the villains get all the good lines, and he's overshadowed by them. That's what it said in the story. He thinks that the villains get all the good lines. And by this time, they knew there was going to be another Batman movie. They had already, back then, you knew the progression was, okay, we've done the Joker. And to your point, they're killing off all the bad guys. We've done the Joker. He's dead. We've done the Penguin. He's dead. We've done Catwoman. She was supposed to be getting her own movie. So obviously, we're going to get the Riddler next, because these are the big four. Back in 93, 94, the big rumor was, okay, we're doing the Riddler. It's going to be Robin Williams. It's got to be Robin Williams, because he had actually wanted to play the Joker in '89,
Mm.
and he was one
That
of
would
the
have been.
finalists. I think he was down to the wire, but when you get Nicholson, you got to
Yeah.
go with Nicholson.
Oh yeah.
I think he could have done. I think he would have been interesting as the Joker, especially you didn't know back in '89, but since then, when you saw a lot of his he played a couple more sinister roles later in
hmm
his career. I
Yep.
think if he and again, we were talking about how, you could see a lot of the camp that maybe with youth was covered up when we were younger, and we didn't see the camp in Batman '89. But if he played it straight, I think he could have been a very good Joker. But I think
Yeah.
he could have been a really great Riddler also.
Yeah. Definitely.
And so I do remember, before it came out that Keaton wasn't coming back, it was supposed to be Michael Keaton. Rene Russo was supposed to play the love interest. They thought it was going to be Robin Williams as the Riddler. And I don't think they had announced Two-Face at that time. I
Yeah.
think
I
they
was. I
only
was
had the
reading.
Riddler.
Yeah, I was reading up on that, and Billy D. Williams had actually still been under contract to play Two Face until they were able to get Tommy Lee Jones, and got a new director and everything. So they bought they were able to get him out of the contract, but he was essentially supposed to come back to play Two Face.
And this was after Tommy Lee Jones won the Oscar
Yep.
for The Fugitive.
Yeah.
This was at the height of his '90s fame.
Yep. Yeah,
When
I remember seeing that. I was like, because I went to see The Fugitive with my dad, and then like, oh, he's gonna be in the new Batman movie, and just seeing seeing the trailer and everything, I was like, this is much different than than The Fugitive, much different.
when they announced Val Kilmer as Batman, I was very, 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 very excited. This was after The Doors, and especially after Tombstone. I was a huge, by '94, '95, huge Val Kilmer fan. And again, this keeps popping up. The geek in me said, okay, he looks like how Batman should look. He is the good-looking playboy. He looks like Bruce Wayne. I remember Jim Carrey being cast as the Riddler, and that, speaking of Tommy Lee Jones at the apex of his fame,
Yeah.
this is
Oh
when
yeah.
Jim Carrey was
Oh
riding
yeah.
a legendary heater. I mean, he had done Ace Ventura, he'd done Dumb and Dumber. He was at that
In
time, I
Living
think that,
Color, he was.
yeah, he was coming off
He
of
had
In Living
In
Color.
Living Color.
He was the highest paid actor
Yeah.
in Hollywood. He's making $20 million a picture, which I think at the time was record breaking. So they had Val Kilmer, who was hot. They had Jim Carrey, who was really hot. They had Tommy Lee Jones, who was hot. And then they cast Nicole Kidman because, God forbid, Renee Russo, I think, she might have been 35 or 36. She was all of a sudden deemed too old to play the love
Yeah.
interest.
Yeah.
I mean, I can't say that they made a mistake by casting Nicole Kidman, because she is unbelievably beautiful in this movie.
Yeah. I had
Um,
actually, because this one and the next one were the two that I hadn't watched as much, and I had totally forgotten that she was in it. And so when she came up, I was like, oh, okay, that's her.
so I feel like with Forever, I was way more excited for Batman Forever than I was for Batman Returns. It was almost, because now I was 20,
Hmm.
and it was at the beginning of the internet, the beginning of kind of that movie geekdom kind of culture that has now kind of turned toxic. But it was just the beginning of that. And me
Yeah.
and my friends were older, so we talked about all this kind of stuff, and we were excited for movies, and we talked about movies and stayed up together watching movies. I thought that Jim Carrey looked like how the Riddler should look like. Tommy Lee Jones, coming off The Fugitive, I thought he was the greatest casting ever for Two-Face before the movie came out, because
Yeah.
I said to my friends, he can play serious, and Two-Face needs to be a serious character, and he can pull off both sides of the character. I was not aware who Joel Schumacher was, so when they
Yeah.
announced that he was the director, it didn't really mean that much to me. But as I said, and Val Kilmer, I just thought looked like how Bruce Wayne should look. And when the trailer came out, and this was again Entertainment Tonight, I taped it off of Entertainment Tonight, and knowing that Robin was going to be in it.
That was the big thing that got me, because I grew up obviously watching the old Batman TV show and everything, and like the first two movies I liked them, but I was like, where's Robin? Robin, I love the character Robin, so when I heard that he was going to be in this one, I was like, oh yeah.
And this went back to, he was written into into 89, and then his scenes were cut. And I believe in 89 they had thought about getting Marlon Wayans to play him.
Yeah.
In Batman Returns, they actually signed Marlon, and I might be saying this wrong. I know Marlon Wayans did sign a contract to play Robin.
Yeah, I
Did
remember
get
reading that.
paid,
Yeah.
did get paid not to play him, but he did get paid. They eventually thought they were going to bring Robin either into 89 or Returns, and then it was always deemed there was too many characters and there's just not enough time to do it. In 89, they're going to have the Joker kill his family, so he and Batman both have the same kind of trauma, and that's how they're connected. In Returns, they were going to have the Penguin kill his family, and that's how he and Batman would be connected. So to find out that they were finally going to have Robin, Chris O'Donnell at the time, I didn't really know who he was.
Yeah, Chris O'Donnell. I when I first saw him, I was like, "Oh, cool! It's the dude from Goonies." I always got him and Sean Astin mixed up.
When you said it, my mind automatically went to Sean Astin. Oh, yeah, they do kind of look alike, don't they?
For years when I was young, I always got them mixed up. So, oh, the kid from Goonies, and it's like, no, that's totally different person.
I always bring this up. Like, these are the core memories I have. It's not, I always say, I can't help my kids do math homework, but I can remember sitting in my basement videotaping that Entertainment Tonight episode and seeing that trailer. It's still a great trailer. It starts with him, it starts with Alfred saying to him, can I interest you in a sandwich? And you see Kilmer in silhouette as Batman.
Yeah,
He just says, I'll get drive through. And just the way he looked with the shadows and
Yeah.
as Batman, I was like, oh my God, this is going to be great.
Yeah.
I love the Batmobile from Batman Forever. I think it's not as cool as the 89 Batmobile. I think it's a really cool Batmobile.
Yeah.
They show Carrie as the Riddler, and he looked so comic accurate. He looked perfect. You saw Two-Face, and he didn't really have that much dialogue, so I just thought, okay, Tommy Lee Jones is going to be a great Two-Face. And then you see that one shot of O'Donnell as Robin where it's got the spotlights kind of showing on him. And he had the newer Robin outfit that they had just introduced in the comics that had the longer pants. They basically wanted to make Robin look cooler and not be in the pixie boots and the short shorts. And I couldn't wait for June to come out. I was like, I need this movie injected into my veins.
Yeah,
as soon as possible.
rewatching these movies, this is the one movie that moved higher up on my list.
I'm so glad you said that, because I was going to say the same thing.
Yeah, it brought more of the campiness.
Whereas Batman Returns fell down.
Yeah.
Forever has moved way up on my list. Go on.
Yeah, I forgot how really good Val Kilmer is in this. You know, he's one of those actors where it's like, oh, Val Kilmer, he's pretty good, and then you watch, it's like, no, he's much better. And I say that every time I see him, like, oh, he's pretty good, and then I watch, I'm like, no, this dude was phenomenal in pretty much everything he ever did, but it did bring more of the campiness to it, so it felt a little more like the old TV show. That's probably why I liked it so much, because I love the old TV show. But it did bring more of the campiness. It was just a fun movie, and much as Tommy Lee Jones and Jim Carrey hated each other when they were filming the movie, their scenes together were so much fun to watch. They were really good.
Yeah, that's one of the great stories that Jim Carrey told when he got the part and he walked up to Tommy Lee Jones in the restaurant and said, "Hey, I'm going to be in Batman Forever with you. I'm playing the Riddler." And Tommy Lee Jones looked at him and just said, "I can't. I'm trying to think. I can't condone your buffoonery," or something like that.
Yeah, because I think, what was it? I forget which movie it was, but one of Jim Carrey's movies beat out one of Tommy Lee Jones' movies.
Yes. I think it
at number one or something.
Yes.
So he had always hated Jim Carrey because of that. So when Jim was cast, he was not happy about it. But their scenes together really were like, you wouldn't even know that these two hated each other, and it was so good.
Batman Forever was the movie when my kids were younger I could show them first, because it
wasn't
brighter,
dark.
It's more fun. But still, as a Batman fan, yes, it's getting a little bit campier, but Val Kilmer is still playing it straight.
Yeah.
And he is a good Batman and Bruce Wayne.
He is.
I wish he would have gotten more movies, and maybe better movies. And that's not taking away, because I think Forever, I mean, I'll ask you at the end to rank them all, but I think Forever is my second favorite, and it almost could move up to number one sometimes. I think it's the most rewatchable out of all the original four.
Yeah, because I told you that I'm trying it like every Friday or every weekend. I'm showing my daughter new movies from when I was younger. We've gotten into like the Lord of the Rings and the Harry Potter series as we went on. She's loving fantasy movies, but one of the series I was going to move on to the Superman and Batman movies. And as I'm rewatching, I'm like, okay, the first two might be a little dark for her, but I think she would get a kick out of this one a lot more.
Yeah. And I think Kilmer and O'Donnell have a great chemistry as Batman and Robin, which you kind of have to have when you're playing Batman and Robin. I think he has a great chemistry with Nicole Kidman.
Mm-hmm.
I think the action in this one is ratcheted up from the first two. Famously, Keaton always said you couldn't move around in the Batman costume. The Panther suit, specifically the suit in the beginning before he gets the sonar suit, I think is the best Batman suit in maybe it's behind Affleck's from Batman vs Superman, because that's so comic accurate, but Kilmer in that Panther suit looks amazing. I think that the whole beginning of Batman Forever, because it jumps right into the action, and I like that. It's more, I always appreciated, again, than I'm sure when Forever came out, I liked it, but I probably said to people, well, the Keaton ones were darker and they were better because they were closer to how Batman is. But watching it now, it starts off, jumps in that Batmobile, drives to where the stuff's going down. You see him swinging down from the
Yep.
Batmobile to land right next to Commissioner Gordon,
Yep.
start talking, goes right up and is out of the elevator and fighting bad guys. Now
Yeah.
I
And
watch it, I think it's so great. And the part that always stuck out to me is when he's hanging onto the helicopter and he headbutts through the window and he
yeah.
says to Tommy Lee Jones, "You need help, Harvey. Give it up." I don't know why. That's just it's a
Yeah.
Batman line, and he
And
does it
one of the
great.
things I do like about, like you said, it jumps right into the action. He knows the villains in this one. Like the other ones,
Yeah, we don't have to
you know,
waste time with we
okay,
don't have to waste time
who's
with their
Penguin,
origin.
who's
Yep.
Joker. This one, it's like, all right, he knows it's Harvey. We don't have to worry about what happened to Harvey previously. He knows that. Somehow he went from Billy G. Williams to Tommy Lee Jones. They still have
That
three
acid,
names, but
the acid,
they don't look
the
alike.
acid really scarred him. That acid
They don't
scarred him
really
a
look
lot.
alike, but he does know Harvey. He does know that he's Two-Faced and everything. So he does, all that. And so that's one of the things I really, really like about this one is that it, like you said, it just gets right into the action. There's no waiting around.
Now,
That made it.
I will say the Tommy Lee Jones of it all, he is, as a comic book fan, he to me is basically playing Two-Face as the Joker. I think he was trying to match Carrie for being over the top. Carrie's doing Frank Gorshin, but I think that works for the Riddler. I will say I'd rather have a Jim Carrey type of Riddler than the serial killer Zodiac type of killer from the Batman, but that's just me as I get older
Yeah.
now. But Jim Carrey was playing a comic book accurate Riddler. He's
Mm-hmm.
in the one piece Riddler outfit with the question marks all over it. Tommy Lee Jones, I feel, is one of the greatest wasted potentials. I think he could have played, if you would have put him in the Nolan movies as Harvey Dent,
Yeah.
if you would have given him a serious
Something to
Harvey
sink his
Dent,
teeth into.
Harvey Dent to play, I think he
Yeah.
could have knocked it out of the park. But it doesn't ruin the movie for me. I think now I just go with it. Now
Yeah.
back then I probably had to in my brain just say, well, he's just playing a different type of Harvey Dent
Yeah.
Two-Face. But now I could just go, it's in line with how the rest of that movie is. But I feel like Forever for me was the second Batmania, in that I was buying the comic book adaptation. I bought the novelization. I
Mm-hmm.
bought it when it came out on VHS as soon as it came out. I probably saw it 4, 5, 6
Yeah.
times.
I remember going to McDonald's and getting the cups that they had, the
I
glasses.
didn't have the cups. I wish now you could probably sell them. You could put your kid through college, I think,
Yeah.
if you sell them on
Yeah.
eBay.
Yeah, the other thing that this one also made me realize is for years I used to say, Val Kilmer, he was very good, but I thought he was Batman. I thought George Clooney was a better Bruce Wayne, because he was the suave, he was the playboy type. But Michael Keaton, I always thought was the best of both worlds. But rewatching it, like you said, Val Kilmer does both of them a lot better than I do remember. So his Batman and his Bruce Wayne ended up being moving up on my list as well. Just everything about this movie I thought was just much better.
I'm glad to hear you say that. One, because I'm the same way. I always liked Forever, but what rewatching it, it shot up
Yeah,
my rankings of the movies. But I always thought it was because I've always been a huge Val Kilmer fan, so I thought that
yeah.
maybe I was just, because I was such a fan, that I was giving him the benefit of the doubt. But I think he never falls into silliness in that movie. He's playing it straight, but that's good, because even in the comics, and Batman can be anything. Batman can be dark and serious. Batman
Hmm.
can be funny. Batman can fight aliens. He can fight the Joker. He could be a detective. But Kilmer's not playing it as a joke. He's not winking at the
Yeah,
camera. He's playing it serious, but it works.
it does.
And I don't know if I could have bought Keaton with a Robin, but I by Val Kilmer as Bruce
Yeah.
Wayne and Batman having a Robin and having that brother relationship with Chris O'Donnell. And I think Chris O'Donnell is actually very good as Robin in
Yeah,
this
he
movie.
was very good. And the one thing, the two things. One of them is at one point towards the end, towards near the end or close to the end of the movie, we get one of his famous "Holy something Batman"
Yes, yes,
lines.
yes.
So I got a kick out of that. And also, I always wondered if the bomb scene that they use in this was an homage to the bomb scene in the in the Adam West Batman ones, because
The
you have this
bomb scene with
giant
the great
bomb.
yes, with the Graysons, with the
Yeah,
flying
you have the
Graysons, and
giant
yes, the fly.
bomb, and it's like it's just so over the top
I
huge.
never thought of that. You might be right. You might be right. Showing how different it was from 95 to now when Dick Grayson comes to Wayne Manor for the first time and he says he's leaving and Bruce Wayne says to him, "Oh, the circus must be halfway to Metropolis by now." I remember turning to my brother and just saying, "He mentioned Metropolis. He talked about Metropolis in a Batman movie." Just to think that, oh my God, they're
There's
acknowledging
something there.
that
Yeah,
Metropolis exists in this, because that was one thing I hated. You talked about how the bad guys die, which
yeah,
I didn't like, but I always hated these movies that they made it like they were the only superheroes in the
yeah,
world, that it was only Batman, it was only Superman, that in the Spider-Man movies before the MCU, it was only
yeah.
he was the only superhero. Being a comic book reader, I hated that. I'm like, no, I want them to acknowledge. It doesn't, you don't have to
Hmm.
show them, but just acknowledge that
Yeah.
these
So
other
that line,
superheroes
yeah,
exist. That actually warms my heart to know that it moved up your list too. I think Batman
yeah,
Forever unfairly um, gets gets lumped in with the next movie
yeah.
we're going to talk
Oh
about,
yeah,
which is Batman and Robin. So I do remember that really soon after Batman Forever, because Batman Forever, again, big hit, number one hit of the year, and I think it was a bigger hit than WB thought, and that's what they wanted after
yeah.
Batman Returns. With McDonald's complaining that, oh, kids are getting scared, they're not buying Happy Meals because they're freaked out by the Penguin. Batman Forever brought the families back
Hmm.
because it had such a lighter tone. So
Yeah,
they turned right around and said, we're making a sequel. It's coming out in 97. I remember that it's going to be Batman and Robin, and there were rumors that it was going to be the Scarecrow and Jeff Goldblum was going to play the Scarecrow. I remember them saying Howard Stern was going to play the Scarecrow. I do also remember that they did say Mr. Freeze, and they thought it was going to be Patrick Stewart, which I think would have been
that would
amazing.
have been interesting.
It would have been, I
Yeah,
think it would have been amazing with
yeah,
Patrick Stewart as Mr. Freeze. And Poison Ivy was announced, and people thought it was going to be Julia Roberts because she had worked with Joel Schumacher. But it wasn't soon after Forever that it came out that Schumacher and Kilmer had not gotten along during
hmm,
Batman Forever. And Kilmer has admitted that he back then was not was not the easiest to work with. And Joel Schumacher seemed like a really good guy.
yeah,
He seemed like somebody who would have been easy to get along with. Now I don't know.
yeah,
I've watched other interviews with actors who've worked with him, and they seem like they had no problem with him. So I don't know if there's any deep dark secrets that he has, but there was just something with him and Kilmer. And like I said, Kilmer has admitted he was not the easiest,
yeah.
but it was soon after that it came out that Kilmer was not
Hmm.
coming back for Batman and Robin. He did The Saint after Batman and Robin, and I think his excuse was he couldn't do it because he was doing The Saint. The Saint is a terrible. I
Oh
think
my
I
God.
saw it once, and I remember it being a terrible movie. Maybe I'll have to revisit it, but I remember it being really bad.
Yeah, that was a huge miss on his part. I do
So the
wonder how much different this one would have been with him in
mm-hmm.
as Batman, but
Well,
yeah,
if it turned out the same, if it turned out the same with him in the role, I can't see him being in the type
yeah,
of movie that it became. But I do. So the search was on again, and there were rumors, and I think Schumacher talked about it. He said at one time they were thinking of David Duchovny to play Batman, which he was at the height of the X Files
yeah, X
fame. So,
Files, yeah,
and I always felt like, because when Clooney was cast, he wasn't George Clooney yet. This was his
hmm,
first real. He was still doing
yeah,
ER,
yeah,
but they were talking about David Duchovny, and I'm trying to think of the actor from the TV. Do you remember the TV show The Practice? I think his name is it Dylan McDermott.
Dylan McDermott,
I think
yeah,
he was
yeah,
rumored, which I could kind of see him as
Yeah.
Batman. But I always felt like this is what I mean. They were looking at, okay, well, maybe we could just get David Duchovny. Maybe we could just get Dylan McDermott. They were looking for that hot name.
Yeah.
And I feel like that's why Clooney was cast. And as I just said, he wasn't George Clooney then. He's the guy from ER.
Yeah.
He's the
Trying to
really,
become George Clooney.
he was trying to become George Clooney, but at that time he was still just the
Yeah.
guy from ER. So when he was cast, I remember I thought, okay, well, I could, to your point, I could see him as Bruce Wayne. He's a
Yeah.
good looking guy, and I think he can pull off being the rich playboy. And I'm sure he looks good in the Batman
Yeah.
outfit. When they announced Schwarzenegger as Mr. Freeze, I don't know. I mean, it's Arnold Schwarzenegger. How could you not like Arnold
Yeah.
Schwarzenegger? I didn't think, as a comic book fan, I didn't think that he fit what
Yeah.
Mr. Freeze was
I mean,
from the
like
comics. But
I said earlier, I'm not a, I'm not a big comic book person. I enjoy comic book movies, but I didn't read comic books, and even I was like, that just seems a little wrong.
yeah, I was excited for Patrick Stewart because that's what
Yeah.
he looked like and kind of had. He wasn't British, but he kind of had that Shakespearean kind of tragedy
Yeah.
with his wife. That was the movie got that right with the relationship with his wife. I think they actually took that from the animated series
Yeah.
and used a lot of those aspects for the movie. And with Uma Thurman, I was like, okay, I could see her as Poison Ivy.
Yeah.
Again, I mean, it's not, you just have to get a very beautiful woman and you're going to put her into a tight outfit. So, but Uma
Pretty
Thurman was
much.
coming off of Pulp Fiction. She was a respected actress. So, I mean, I was a little bit wary, but I had liked Batman Forever. I liked what Schumacher did with it, and I was a fan of VR, so I was cautiously optimistic.
Yeah. I mean,
Did you?
my big thing for this movie was I was at that age. I was in love with Alicia Silverstone at the time. So as soon as she was cast as Batgirl, I was like, "Yep, have to make sure to see this." They're still bringing back Chris O'Donnell, so that's cool. I still get my Robin, but yeah, it was all about wanting to see her in the movie, and I was disappointed with how things turned out with that. It was not good for her.
So they announced Batgirl, which I didn't mind. That was kind of the natural progression. If you brought in Robin for Forever, you're going to
Hmm.
bring in Batgirl. Seeing her in the costume at first, the costume looks nothing like Batgirl. It's funny, the Batman TV show, Batman 66, she was created specifically for that show.
Hmm.
So the costumes for the show and the comic are exactly the
Yeah.
same. So Batgirl from Batman 66 is totally comic accurate because she was created for the TV show. Seeing Alicia Silverstone, and I liked her from Clue. I mean, she was coming off of Clueless. Seeing her in the outfit, I mean, it looks nothing like the Batgirl outfit. She's basically in a mask. And I think by then the first trailers had started to trickle out, and just from the trailers, you could tell kind of the tone, the way the movie was going to be.
Yeah.
And
Wasn't the trailers like there was some like they were like turning towards the camera, you got the mask or you got like the chest and and then it got to her, like the first time you saw Batgirl and it was the trailer and something like that.
I think it was something like that.
Yeah.
I just after the movie came out, and there was a really great box set when they first released all the 4 movies on DVD, and they had a lot of great behind the scenes extras. And they talked to Schumacher, and he said while they were making Batman and Robin, he kept telling the cast, "Okay, just remember this is a comic book movie. It's a toy movie. We're going to sell a
Yeah.
lot of toys." And you can tell from the movie that a lot of the set pieces, a lot of the vehicles and the costumes are just there because, okay, we can sell this as a Batman toy.
Yeah. Yeah.
And I saw this. We went to the University of Penn movie theater in Philadelphia, me and my brother, my mom, and a cousin of mine to see this opening night. And about 20 minutes into the movie broke. So we actually found another movie theater to go to at a later time. Got there, sat down, started the movie again. A half hour in, my cousin in the middle of the movie got up in the middle of the theater and said, "What is this?" We finished it, and promptly went outside and destroyed it too. Just talked about how terrible it was and just how corny and campy it was.
Yeah.
I will say with Forever, as I said, when my kids were younger, these were the two movies I showed them at first because they're
Yeah.
the easiest to show. They're not scary, they're not dark. Doing this rewatch, I will say I do not hate Batman and Robin like I used to. I don't think it's a good movie particularly,
Yeah.
but there are good parts to it.
There are.
For as much as George Clooney has become a great actor, and Out of Sight is one of my favorite movies, I love him in that movie, and how much you would think that he could play a good Batman, I feel like he is totally miscast as
He is.
Batman. Even watching it again, I don't, as much as I think you were surprised by how well Val Kilmer played both Bruce Wayne and Batman. I am surprised. I just think he's miscast. I don't think he's a good Bruce Wayne. I think
Yeah.
he was still figuring out how not to just get by on his natural charm. And he's just basically George Clooney in the movie.
Yeah.
And as Batman,
On my notes here, I have for this movie, the first line is George Clooney. Oh boy.
mm-hmm. And as Batman, he's just basically he's doing Adam West basically from the 66 show, but he's not doing it very well.
Yeah.
And I don't buy him as Batman. I don't buy him as much as he looks good in the Batman suit because he's got the jaw for it.
Yeah.
I never buy him as Batman. I don't buy him as Bruce Wayne.
He has like anti-chemistry with Chris O'Donnell.
Yes. Yes, I see what they're going for with he's trying to train him and they're building a relationship, but I like that term anti-chemistry. He is, whereas I think Kilmer and Chris O'Donnell, I bought it as for Forever. One of the really good scenes is when O'Donnell's in the cave and he's being a snotty teenager, which is fine. But he's supposed to be, and he says to him, I'm coming out with you and I need you to train me. How are you going to stop me? And Val Kilmer just gets up and says, I can stop you. And I said, that's Batman. He's being Batman there. You know, but with Clooney and Chris O'Donnell, it's just, it's annoying. I think Chris O'Donnell, for as good as I think he was in Forever, he is annoying and just unlikable in Batman and Robin. He's
the script is just not good in this one. I mean, like you said, there are good parts to it. You can see what they were trying to do with certain aspects, but
the relationship with Bruce and Alfred is good, and I think Clooney plays it well, but that's one of the things that hurts with having three different actors play the part. I mean, God bless Michael Gough, he makes it work because you love him as Alfred, so you feel it. But it would have been great if you had a returning Kilmer or it was him and Keaton, because they would have more of a relationship. And it's played well, but I never buy Clooney as Bruce Wayne and never buy him as Batman, as I said before. The script is bad. Alicia Silverstone is wasted, and I feel bad because for what she went through with that movie. Because she was being shamed for. I mean, you look at her; she's a beautiful young lady. Not that she's old now, but she's older now. But she was barely in her 20s, and she's being shamed because she gained a couple pounds.
That's one thing that I do. Reading up on everything that Schumacher did do is in all the interviews, he was like, she's a growing woman. What's supposed to happen? He always came to her defense in every single interview. So I do respect him for doing that.
But even they try to kind of have a flirtatious relationship with Robin and Batgirl, and I mean that doesn't work with. There's some lines with Robin where he calls her, he's like, "Yeah, little girl," and it's just like he's just. I'm like, what happened between Batman Forever and Batman and Robin?
And one of the lines, like when she finally shows up in the suit and she's like Batgirl, and then George Clooney is like, what about Batwoman or Bat Person? I was like, really?
And we haven't brought up the Bat credit card that he pulls out.
Oh my god.
Never leave home without it. I think that's when my cousin got up and said, "What is this?" in the middle of the theater. And I will say this, Uma Thurman, she's camping it up big
Yeah.
time,
Yep.
but she, in her own way, she's at least giving an interesting performance. I'm not saying it's a good performance, and
Yeah.
I'm not saying it really has anything to do with how Poison Ivy is in the comics, but I think she's just doing what the script asked her to do now.
Yeah.
Watching it again, it comes off. It's a little much after a while, and Schwarzenegger, I'll tell you, my God, with the ice puns. How many ice puns? He's doing what the script is asking
Yeah.
him to do. So it's not like he wrote his own lines, but
Yeah.
my God, with the ice puns. Like,
Yeah.
please. I
I,
think you
I
could.
do I do kind of enjoy him, delivering those ice
Uh-huh.
puns, as awful as they were, especially, being a fan of dad jokes. I do
Mhm.
get a kick out of a lot of the ice puns, so I can appreciate that. But yeah, they were just bad, and I do enjoy how much he's chewing scenery in every scene. How can you not love? He's Schwarzenegger. He's the greatest. So it's like he's so miscast that it
Yes.
actually kind of is entertaining to watch him.
And I had brought it up earlier with 89, but Commissioner Gordon, Pat Hingle, he starts off pretty well in Batman 89. He has a little less to do in Returns.
Yeah,
In Forever, he's kind of relegated to running up in his PJs when
yeah, with the bat signal.
Chase Meridian turns on the
Yeah,
bat signal, and cheering on Batman when he's
yeah,
flying the Batwing. In this one, he's basically a bumbling Keystone Cop. So I kind of feel bad for Pat Hingle. Thank God we got Gary Oldman in The Dark Knight, who was an off the page, an off the. But he was also right off the page as Commissioner Gordon. He was, and I remember when he was cast, I was like, Gary Oldman. I can't. How's Gary Oldman going to be Commissioner Gordon?
yeah,
That's why I don't make movies, and Christopher Nolan does. They actually bring up Superman in the very beginning with the whole. They kind of recreate the. I mean, Batman and Robin. It's Batman Forever. It's them taking the Batman Forever template and
hmm
just putting it onto another movie.
yeah,
It's almost beat by beat the same movie.
yeah,
It starts off with the suit up scene and ends with them running toward the camera with the bat signal.
yeah. Just
But that
not done as
beginning,
well. Not done as good.
exactly. But that beginning scene with Batman and Robin waiting for the Batmobile and the Redbird
Yeah,
and Clooney turns and said, "This is why Superman works alone."
yeah,
I was like, okay, at least he kind of mentioned Superman, so that was cool. But yeah, you could just tell it's one big toy commercial. Everything was
oh
made.
yeah,
The Batmobile all of a sudden now is they started with the neon in Batman Forever, but with
yep.
this movie, it's just
It's
neon.
over.
It's
Yeah,
wall to wall neon. The
yeah,
Batmobile is outlined in neon. It has like a spinning
yeah,
red, I guess, engine or something in the front.
yeah,
To the end when they decide they have to save the city, but first they're going to go back and get changed into their ice outfits.
yeah,
Wait, they only it's all predicated on they have to do something in a certain amount of time, but they had enough time to go back, get changed into different outfits, and then decide
yeah,
to go and try to stop the master plan. So
yeah.
it's you could tell it was studio driven to you need to sell toys, you need to basically do what you did with the last movie because that was
hmm
so much of a big hit, and it turned out that it destroyed the franchise
Many years.
8 years until another movie came out.
Yep.
So yeah, watching it, I can watch it and I can enjoy it on the level of, oh my God, I can't believe that they just made all of these mistakes. I
Yeah.
don't hate it like I did when it came out in 97 because again, then as you know, I was a cinephile. I was a connoisseur of comic books. I couldn't believe that they were making such an affront to Batman
Yeah.
and all of that stupid pretentious bullshit that I was spouting back then. So now I can watch it and just laugh and say, what were they thinking? I mean, Chris O'Donnell has said most of his, I don't think he said he never met Arnold Schwarzenegger. He was never on the same set as him when they were making the movie. And
Crazy.
you could, as I said, with 89, you could see some of the seams and the cracks. I mean,
Yeah.
with Batman and Robin, it's just, you don't have to really squint to see the seams and the cracks. It's right there in front of you.
Yeah. Yeah, I think my favorite bit of trivia about this movie, though, is if you ever meet George Clooney, anyone he meets, and if they say that they saw Batman and Robin in the theater, he will reimburse them for it.
He took you got to give Clooney credit. Most
Yeah.
people, it could have totally derailed his career and destroyed it. And he went on. He said after he made it and it failed at the box office, he said to himself, okay, well, I can just do this kind of stuff and just make movies like this, or I can make movies that I want to make
Yep.
and make good movies. And luckily for him, Out of Sight wasn't a huge hit, but it was a good movie. And then it went on to Ocean's 11, which were hits and also good movies. And he had his run also. So you got to give it to him. He took the lesson of it, and he'll always in interviews own up to it and say, oh, I destroyed Batman, which it's not all on him. It wasn't just him. I appreciate that he takes the blame for it. I did enjoy...
Some actors, some people would have just swept it away and either not put it on their resume or not talked about it. And he's upfront about it. He doesn't shy away from it. So yeah, he it's all part of him now. So definitely have to give him credit on that.
And I do like that he came back for the Flash. I did think that was kind of cool at the end when it's him who walks off and he's Bruce Wayne. I was like, okay, that's cool. I like that it was Clooney. At least he could do that.
I think we also forgot to mention the one huge piece that that this movie did bring to the franchise: bat nipples.
Oh yes. Well, you know what? They were in Batman Forever also. It's just that nobody talked about them, but they were super prominent. Batman and Robin were nipping in this movie, man. They were nipping.
It was called out every single scene.
Well, they were fighting Mr. Freeze, so yes, but it never bothered me as I understood. I was like, it was funny for Jay Leno probably making fun of it back in '97, but it was like, it doesn't matter. They're supposed. If you're gonna go by the comics, they're usually in skin tight outfits, so you know what, you would see their nipples anyway. So I thought you were going to bring up with Batman Forever, one piece of paraphernalia that did come out of Batman Forever that was also really big was the soundtrack for Batman Forever, and that was a great Batman Forever. I feel like if Batman 89 is 1989 in a nutshell, Batman Forever is mid 90s, 1995 in a nutshell, and that soundtrack is it's a great soundtrack, but it is 1995 to a T. And U2 is great.
Yep.
Kiss from a Rose obviously was the huge song, which is played for 5 seconds over the end credits. Hey, it came from Batman Forever, and they would show the video with that and the U2 song, and you would see scenes from the movie. So I had to see it when it was on MTV because I was like, oh, cool. See scenes from the movie with this.
Yep, when MTV played videos.
Exactly. So that was huge. I had like the comic adaptation and the novelization, but I had the soundtrack too. And for Batman and Robin, they had a soundtrack also. I think Smashing Pumpkins was on it. But it was, as the soundtracks progressed, it was like less and less of the songs were actually in the movie. It got to that point in the 90s where it was music inspired by the motion picture, and it was none of the songs were in the movie.
Yeah, you'd get movies that had 2 soundtracks, not even a score, just 2 soundtracks. You'd have a soundtrack with the music that was actually featured in the movie, and then you'd have the inspired by the movie soundtrack that would have songs have nothing to do with the movie at all. They were just inspired somehow.
Well, you could go each of the movies, their soundtracks fit with the movie. Where
they do.
With 89, it's that iconic Prince soundtrack with Bat Dance, and that was just the soundtrack of the summer of '89. By Returns, because it was so much Tim Burton, the one song that came out of it was Susie and the Banshees was
Yeah.
Face to Face that they play at the end, and I think that's the only real song. I think it's only Elfman's score, and that's really the only
Yep.
song
Yeah.
from the movie. But then by Batman Forever in '95, as we said, it's the ultimate '90s soundtrack
Oh yeah.
by '95, and then by '97 with Batman and Robin, you're starting to see the music inspired by the motion
Yeah.
picture Batman and Robin, and none of these songs. It's just a grab bag. It was basically the I love the '90s of
Yeah. Who was
soundtracks.
popular at that time?
Exactly.
We'll just throw them on.
So now that we've talked about all four of the Batman movies, I want to ask you. I'm going to ask, since you're the guest, I'm going to make you go first. And plus, I just want to hear what your order is before I give mine. How do you rank the four Burton
I
Schumacher movies?
yeah. I have the 89 at number one. That's still at number one for me. It's a little lower as number one, but it's still number one for me. I'm going back and forth between Returns and Forever because I did love Returns so much, and I still do enjoy it now. Like I said, I love how dark it is. I love how Tim Burton it is. Before he got later on in his career, Tim Burton. So, but I do love. I always loved early Tim Burton, but it would almost be like maybe Returns went down a little more and Forever has gone up a lot. So that's still two and three, but closer where it's more like a 2A 2B type of deal. And Batman and Robin that's that's dead last. Like you said, I don't hate it as much as I originally did. Just like you, I do appreciate some of the aspects of it a little more, but it's just such a bad. It's just bad.
Well, I will say for me, I kind of went back and forth where I had to put 89 first just
Hmm.
because of, and we've talked about it, just because of what it will always mean to me
Yeah.
at that time in my life. And I always remember what my dad said to me, that I was sitting there and I was just leaning forward for 2 hours watching it, because it was what I had been waiting for my whole life. I was a
Yeah.
Batman fan. Batman was the first superhero that I loved, and I couldn't wait for a
Hmm.
Batman movie.
Yeah.
So that it was just the culmination of what I had been waiting for those 14 years of my life. So as much as I can now watch it, and there are parts where I'm like, okay, that doesn't hold up as well, and there's some decisions that they make in the movie. I still will
Hmm.
never agree with the Joker killing his parents, but that's got to be number one. But number two, and coming up fast, is Batman Forever.
Hmm.
It's just so entertaining. It's
Yeah.
so rewatchable. I love Val Kilmer as Batman. I think he is underrated as Batman. I wish he would have gotten another movie. I wish he would have
Yeah.
gotten a whole series of movies to play Batman. And it's so different in '89, but I think they're both they're they both embody the times they were
Yeah.
made
Yeah. For what they
so
wanted to
so
do.
well.
Yeah. For what they
Yes.
wanted to do, they both did them. I don't know perfectly, but they both did them to a T.
Yes. And for me, Returns is three, but Returns has fallen. There
Hmm.
are some parts that I really, really love in Returns, but I as I watched it for this rewatch, there were, I felt like I was picking up my phone a lot more, and just
Yeah.
and it's not because I've seen it so many times. I was like, okay, it's kind of dragging here a little bit.
Yeah.
As much as I love Danny DeVito, I don't like the Penguin as a main protagonist type of villain. I think what they did with him in The Batman with Colin Farrell, having him as a side character,
Hmm.
as a side villain. But Michelle Pfeiffer, I mean, I'll
Yeah.
never argue that Michelle Pfeiffer was
Yeah.
great as Catwoman, and we've gotten pretty good Catwomans. Michelle Pfeiffer, um, we've gotten Zoe Kravitz. I think was great in the Batman, The Dark Knight Rises.
Oh, Anne Hathaway.
Anne Hathaway.
Yeah.
I think all three of them have played
Yeah.
Catwoman really, really well. So Returns has fallen in my estimation, but I don't think it's ever going to fall behind Batman and
No.
Robin as much as to your point, I don't hate it like I used to. I can see what they are trying to do in certain areas. For me, it's just the ultimate. It's that ultimate of studios just saying we can throw whatever we want out there
Yeah.
and people are going to buy it because it's a Batman movie, and they had to learn their lesson. They had to learn their lesson. It destroyed the franchise that was making them money all through the 90s because they thought they could just put anything out there and that audiences would eat it up, and they found that they wouldn't. I mean, in a way, it's a blessing that they made it because without Batman and Robin, you never get the Dark Knight trilogy. I'm not going to cry for George Clooney. He's done pretty well for himself
Yes.
after Batman and Robin. And Chris
Chris
O'Donnell
O'Donnell
did about
did
30
TV.
years worth of CSI, so
Yeah.
he's okay. I'm sure all the people in Arnie's fine.
Yeah.
But yeah, so that's my rankings. I had a lot of fun talking through this. These are movies, as much as they very much become like the Star Wars movies for me, where I will love them, warts and all. I can sit here and talk about what's good about them and what's bad about them. But for the most part, even Batman and Robin, I can
Yeah.
sit and watch them and I can have fun with them. If I watched all of them with my son, actually, now that he's older, we'd watched them before when he was younger, but
Okay.
he really, now that he's 14, he's my age from when I watched 89,
Okay.
and he's seen the Nolan movies and the
Hmm.
Batman. So I was
Okay.
interested to see how he felt about them.
Yeah.
And he liked 89, and he thought Returns was okay. He liked Forever. He liked
Okay.
Kilmer also as Batman, which was interesting. And he just laughed through Batman
Yeah.
and Robin. But
Yeah.
he's also got a different opinion of it now because he knew the Nolan movies more than he knew these
Okay.
movies. And
Yeah.
he'd even
That's
seen
interesting. Yeah.
for him, I think his favorite, he likes The Dark Knight
Okay.
as his favorite Batman movie, but he likes The Batman as his second favorite
Yeah.
Batman
Yeah.
movie. So
I enjoy the Batman a lot. I remember I haven't seen it in a bit, but like when it first was released on Max, I watched it. I must have watched it like 3 or 4 times in like the first couple of weeks. I really liked what they did with the character. So I and I mean I've grown to become a big Robert Pattinson fan over the years. I never watched, not even touched the
Twilight,
Twilight series,
no, me
but
neither.
everything he's done since then to try to show people that he can act, from the Lighthouse, which I think is brilliant,
Oh,
and
that's a great. I saw that in the
then
theaters. That's a great
yeah,
movie
and then
with
do
with Willem Dafoe,
Willem
who
Dafoe,
should have been the Joker in a Batman movie.
yeah, and then doing the Batman. I remember that was one of those ones where when he was announced, it was, what is the Twilight guy? And it's like, no, he's not the Twilight guy anymore. And I just thought I really liked what he did. There were some parts I didn't love. I mean, the Riddler, because I know they wanted to ground it more into more realistic, and I thought that was an interesting take on it, but it wasn't the Riddler.
Well, it's
So
funny because I feel like Kilmer and Clooney are the only two actors when they announced that they were going to be Batman didn't get that much blowback. I think
yeah,
Keaton got blowback.
yeah.
I think you know what? Bale didn't get blowback
I
either. I
don't
think
think he
Keaton
got
got
as much blowback because it was like, it
he
was
was
almost like when
unknown.
Batman
Yeah.
Begins came out, it was like, okay, they're doing another Batman. No one
Yes.
expected much coming out of it. So
Yeah.
when it did really well, everyone was like, okay, let's just roll with it. I'm not a big fan of his portrayal, especially his
No.
growling as Batman. I do not
See, I
like that.
think that was going to be my next question. First, I did want to say that it's funny because I like the Batman, but I think I've come totally completely around where I'm ready for, and I keep bringing up the James Gunn Superman. Now obviously I haven't seen it yet, but I'm ready for, because I love the Nolan movie so much and I like
Hmm.
what he did. I liked that he grounded everything, but I feel like Matt Reeves was like, "All right, you grounded it. We're going to ground it even more. We're going to make this even more grounded." I'm kind of ready for a take that is Batman Forever, but just without the camp.
Hmm.
Whereas it can be a comic book Batman
Yeah,
movie,
a little
and
lighter.
he can, yeah,
Yeah.
he doesn't have to be funny, but it doesn't have to be, oh, my parents are dead. Oh, all I can do is glower. I
Yeah.
think there is a sweet spot with Batman where you can make him. I think whenever they make these movies, a lot of the fans, when they want to try to make it that Batman is so much different than Spider-Man and Superman, where it's like, well, Batman's different. Batman's still a superhero. He
Yeah.
is a superhero. So Batman could still fight aliens and also be a detective and
Yeah.
also be serious, but it
Hmm.
doesn't always have to be super, super dark. So it's going to be interesting. I'm not going to say that I won't watch the next Pat. I thought he was good as Batman. I thought he was very good. So it's not. I'm not saying I won't watch it, but I would like to see what James Gunn could possibly do with it
Hmm.
as a more comic booky
Yeah.
Batman.
I kind of I
My
kind of want to see it more like the old Justice League of America cartoon.
yes,
Something
yes,
bright,
exactly,
something
exactly,
bright that you can
yes.
actually see.
Yes, I that would be my total sweet spot. Justice League
Yeah.
Unlimited actually I think is a great representation of what I would love to see with the whole new DCU that James Gunn is
Hmm.
putting out there. I would
Yeah.
love to see something like Justice League Unlimited. But before we do hopefully see that, I do want to ask you, so you kind of tipped your hand a little bit. Out of all the iterations of Batman, who was your favorite Batman movie wise?
The movie wise, that's as far as the portrayal of Batman or the actual
Yes.
Batman. Oh, the actual portrayal of
I
Batman.
would say separately, portrayal of Batman, then
Yeah.
favorite Batman movie. And this could be,
Yeah.
all the iterations.
I think hmm, Kilmer might, he definitely has moved up. Like I said, I'm not. I think Bale does a good job as Bruce Wayne, but I don't like his Batman, especially the later it gets in the series, because I just hate the growling voice of his. I really, really like what Pattinson does with it. I might go between one of those two, either Pattinson and or Kilmer, but I
Okay.
might lean more towards Kilmer at this time.
I'm loving the Kilmer love. I'm loving
Yeah,
it. So
yeah,
what's
yeah.
overall all of the Batman movies, favorite Batman movie? If you had to pick one to bring to a desert island, which Batman movie would you bring?
It might be 89 just because of everything it encompasses, and I'm such a big Prince fan, and his
Okay.
soundtrack
No,
puts
that's
it
that's
over the
valid. That's
top for me.
valid. Yeah. That's valid. I'm
Yeah.
gonna make it easy. Favorite movie is The Dark Knight because that's
Okay.
my second or third favorite movie of all time. I think it's a perfect movie. And favorite Batman, I will give the caveat, I totally get where you're coming from with the growly voice, but I think what Bale did as Bruce Wayne and as Batman, I wish his voice was yes, I do wish it was a little less growly, but I think he is a great Bruce Wayne. I think he's a great Batman. Uh and Nolan, no, I just think Nolan with The Dark Knight is just working on another level. The Dark Knight for me was the Batman movie I didn't know I'd been waiting for all my
Hmm.
life. It was one of those when they talk about every once in a while on Twitter, you'll see, oh, what's a movie that you wish you could see for the first time again?
Hmm.
It's the dark one. One of them would be The Dark Knight because that's one of the most. That's the most recent that I wish I could see
Yeah.
again. I can remember seeing it for the first time, and like I said, turning to my brother and just saying to him, "This is amazing." As we were
Yeah.
watching it, like this is just what
Yeah.
I've always wanted to see from a Batman movie.
Yeah. I'll be honest. I was never a huge fan of the Dark Knight, and I think there were a couple of the reasons I saw it maybe weeks after it had come out. So the hype was unreal when I saw it. It was like, so I think it was just overhyped for me. And I also happened to see it. I think it was either the week before, or I mean the week of, or the week after I'd seen Hellboy 2, and I love Hellboy 2. Guillermo del Toro is probably my favorite living director, and I love the Hellboy movies. So having seen those back to back, plus the hype of the movie, I was almost a little let down with it. Like, I could appreciate all the performances, how well made the movie is and everything, but there was just something that didn't click for me for that one.
Well, unfortunately, we're never going to have Brad back onto the show because he doesn't like the Dark. That's what I like about this. Is what is great about movies is that it's so subjective that I could sit here and say, "Oh, the Dark Knight it's the Batman movie that I waited for my whole life," and you could say, "It was all right."
I mean,
Christian
it can
Bale's
be another.
okay.
It could probably be one of those ones like Batman Forever, where I can sit down and watch it again and get a lot more out of it and enjoy it more. But like I said, when you get the hype of some, like, especially a few weeks after it's released and everything, you remember the hype for that movie
Oh
was just
yeah, it was.
unreal.
Yeah, it was close to Batman '89
Yeah.
hype that summer. It wasn't at that level, but it was close. The Dark Knight is the closest it ever got to Batman '89, and it was with the whole with Heath Ledger
Yeah.
dying beforehand and people seeing the previews of him as the Joker. It was just it was the hype was up. I do remember going to see it and just the mass of it was one of the other than Infinity War and Endgame, it was one of
Mhm.
the last times that it was just like a mass of bodies waiting to get into the
Yeah.
movie theater to go see the movie. So yeah, I do get you with the hype, but I mean it's great. And with a series like this, with these many people playing the character and
Yeah.
the different iterations, it's fun to talk to people because you're always going to have a different favorite actor
Hmm.
who played Batman, a different favorite movie. I'm happy that Val Kilmer was getting the love from you because
Yeah.
I think Val Kilmer is very much overlooked. But yeah, it was fun. It was fun talking through these because I
Yeah.
really wanted to talk about all of the stuff that came around the movies also and what was going on and yeah, it was interesting to talk it through. So, how
Yeah.
did you feel with your first podcast experience?
It was fine. A lot of just, you know, us just shooting back and forth. Yeah.
See, told you it was going to be easy. Like I mentioned at the beginning of the podcast, this is going to be the season finale
Okay.
for season 1 of the podcast. But we will be back. I'm going on vacation in about a week and a half
Okay.
from now, so we're going to take a little bit of a break as as I take a little bit of a break as my kids' school year is finally done and
Oh yeah.
dance recitals and sports are finally done too. So that's going to be fun. But we will be back later in the summer with new episodes. I'm actually excited. I think I have a couple things lined up. We're going to be doing an episode on the TV show Buffy the Vampire Slayer.
Okay.
I'm going to try to have my daughter on, my 11-year-old daughter, to talk about. I think we're going to talk about Bridge to Terabithia, the
Hmm.
the the book, because that was one of my favorite books as a kid. She just read it, but I
Okay.
think we're also going to talk about. She's my reader, so we're both going to talk about our love for reading and we took a daddy daughter day a couple weeks ago and went to Barnes and Noble and just hung around the bookstore for a little bit.
That,
So I
that's
want to see
cool.
if I can get her on to talk about her love of reading and my love of reading and the book. I'm going to try to watch the movie also with her. So we'll see if that episode develops. I want to try to do an episode on the animated Hobbit Rankin Bass
Okay.
special. I want to do a Doctor Who episode. These are all I have
Yeah,
talked
that's
to.
a series I would like to try to. I tried to get into it a few times, especially a bunch, a few years ago when it was really, really, picking up a
Mhm.
lot of steam. But like that, it was one of those things where the fan base just turned me off. They were just,
It's a
but
tough
it's like
fan
it's kind
base.
of hard. Like how do you jump in for that one? Because it's been on for so long that it's like, do you have to
After we're
watch the old, the old stuff and
after we're done recording, I'll give you a jump on point. I'll let you know, or I'll make you wait for the podcast so I know that
yeah.
I'll have a listener. Those are some of the episodes I want to do. There's also a couple more that I have ideas for that I've reached out to some people and some people have reached out to me. I do want to say I want to thank not only Brad for being on tonight, but all my guests I've had on for this first season of the show, um, and just all the listeners I've had on, all the people who have reached out and who have been listening. I really do appreciate every episode. Every episode, I always thank the Best Care Anywhere podcast, but I want to thank them again just because, one, for having me on and for inspiring me to start up the show, and for helping me to meet most of the guests I've had on my podcast.
Yep.
It's been great to be able to pull from all the friends I've made from the Best Care Anywhere podcast.
Yeah.
So I will also I will always give them their flowers.
One of the few positives about social media.
That's very true. I also wanted to thank the History on Film podcast. They were those guys guested on one of my early episodes, the Pokemon episode, and they were one of the first podcasts to reach out and to share my episodes and to just share this podcast out there on social media. So I wanted to thank them for the support that they've given me over the last couple months, and just again thank all the listeners, and to tell everybody out there that I've had a really good time these last couple months doing these episodes, and I'm looking forward to the second season that'll start in later in the summer, and the stuff we're going to have going on. It's exciting stuff. It's just fun, like we did tonight, just to talk through these things that we grew up with. And I just like hearing people's different opinions. I do. That's why I wanted to ask you the question, who's your favorite Batman? Because you're going to meet different people, and they're going to give you different answers. And it's fun to talk it through and to hear, well, why do you like this? Why do you like this movie? Why do you like him as Batman? And why do you not like this? So it's just always great to have a platform like this to get to talk to people about that kind of stuff.
Yeah, definitely. Yeah, and then thank you for having me. It's been a blast.
Yeah. Do you want to give out any information for people looking for you out there on social media? Or
yeah.
do you want to...
If you want to find me on social media, I don't remember my Bluesky because I go on it maybe once a week, so I don't remember that.
I know, it's like Bluesky. Everybody jumped on there. It was like, aha, we're gonna find our own space on Bluesky, and I kind of feel the same way. I'm like, oh yeah, I'm on Bluesky too. I gotta look on there and see if anybody did anything.
But for Twitter, I'm at Ace of Joshi. Joshi is Japanese women's pro wrestling, which I'm a big fan of. So it's at Ace ACE of Joshi, or you can just look up for Big Beard Booty Daddy on that.
And as I just said, I am on Bluesky as well as Twitter, and as always, I will not call it the other name because screw that guy. Although he did provide me, I'm going to date the podcast. He did provide me with a lot of enjoyment yesterday with his antics with his his Orange Julius buddy. But yeah, I'm on Bluesky and on Twitter. You can usually find me under This Lightsaber Kills Fascists on both, or Mick Jamison 1, I think, for both of them. But if you put it, I think I'm the only person who has this you're not going to find This Lightsaber Kills Fascists 5, I don't think. So, and I'm also, I did create for Bluesky and for Twitter a Pop Culture Basement handle. So if you look for Pop Culture Basement, it's going to be mostly the same stuff that I put on Twitter under my other handle, but just look for me on there. I do ask all the time, please, if you can, share the podcast with your friends, with your family, even with your enemies. I mean, that's fine. If you don't like the podcast and you don't like somebody, send them the link to the podcast, because you'll be like, oh, this podcast stinks. I'm going to let this guy who I hate listen to it.
Yes. Hate listening is always welcome.
And if you can, just throw us a review on Apple, or just rate the show on Apple, because it helps to get the algorithm out there. We are on YouTube now. I just always laugh. I'm like, yes, the podcast is on YouTube for all the 14 to 15-year-olds who want to listen to a podcast about the Rolling Stones or the Batman movies from the 80s and 90s. But, you got to get the stuff out there.
Yeah.
Once again, like I said, this is going to be the season finale for season 1. We will be back. It's not going to be that long. Sometime, I would think, in later July, after I'm on vacation, and just decompress and edit the 2 or 3 podcasts that I have to edit, which is fun, but does take some time, as you have children and a wife who actually want you to do stuff instead of just spending time on the computer. I don't know what they're thinking. They got to get their priorities straight. But once again, Brad, thank you for being on tonight. I had a great time talking to you. And I have a great time always, now finally getting to talk to people face to face, who I'm always talking to on Twitter most of the time. So that was great also. If you have any ideas for shows, let me know. I would love to have you on again because I had a great time talking to you.
Oh, yeah.
And thank you to everybody out there again for listening to the show, for sharing the show, and just for making the community even better just by talking to everybody about these shows that I've been doing. I've been having a great time, and we'll be back soon. So thank you guys, and I'll talk to you all soon. Bye.
You must be new in town. In Gotham City, Batman and Robin protect us.